The ruins lay quiet in the morning light. The girl stood beside the human, her chain dragging softly against the broken stones. Yet inside her, something heavier had lifted. She had spoken the words she never thought she would. She had chosen to stay. Her chest burned with both fear and relief. Fear of what this meant, fear of what her people would say if they saw her now, but relief too. Relief that for once, she was not alone. The human moved carefully through the ruins, guiding her with slow steps, his eyes scanning the horizon. Danger was still out there, but his presence made the shadows feel less sharp, less near. At times she caught herself staring at him, the scars on his arms, the strength in his stance, but more than that, the fire in his eyes, fire not of cruelty, but of will, the will to protect, the will to carry pain so another would not. Her claws trembled against the cloak. She whispered low, "I don't understand you." Her voice cracked. "You are human, yet you are not what they said." He turned his gaze to her, his voice steady. "Maybe that is because I chose to be more than what they are," he said. "Pain taught me what I never want to become." Her throat tightened. She thought of her people, of the endless warnings, of the fear that had chained her mind long before metal touched her skin. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe not all humans were monsters. They reached deeper into the ruins, where shadows gave cover. The human stopped, resting against a wall, his breath heavy from the night's escape. She sat beside him, her chain clinking softly. Silence stretched. At last she asked, her voice breaking, "Do you see me as a prisoner still?" His eyes turned to hers, steady, unyielding. "No," he said. "I see you as someone who deserves more than chains, someone who deserves to live free." Her tears burned again. She shook her head, whispering, "Then why? Do I still feel bound?" He leaned closer, his voice softer now. "Because chains of the body are easy to break," he said, "but chains of the heart take time." Her chest ached, the words struck deep. She pressed a hand against her heart, her voice shaking. "Then why do I feel safe with you?" He did not smile, but his eyes softened. "Because safety is what you should have always known," he said, "and if you let me, I will give it to you." She turned away quickly, tears spilling, her body shook, but not from fear, from something she had never allowed herself to feel. Trust, fragile, dangerous trust. The world outside the ruins still burned with danger. The hunters would come again. Her people would never understand. But none of that mattered in this moment. What mattered was the man beside her, the one who turned her torture into shelter. She leaned closer without meaning to, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. Her chain rattled once, then fell still. He did not move away. He let her lean, his presence steady as stone, warm as fire. For the first time in her life, she whispered words she never thought she could. "I am not afraid anymore." The human looked at her, his eyes filled with quiet strength, his voice steady. "Then you are free." The silence that followed was not heavy with fear, but with peace. The kind of peace she thought could never exist. The kind of peace she had found not in freedom alone, but in him. And as dawn spread across the sky, she realized the truth. She had expected torture, she had braced for pain, but instead she had found something far more dangerous, far more powerful. She had found the bond beyond pain, the bond of trust, of safety, of belonging, and she knew now that no chain in the galaxy could ever take that away. The cell was no longer the same after that night. The girl could not forget the sight of him standing against his own kind, his body shielding hers from danger. It broke something inside her, but it also built something new, something she feared more than chains. The hours dragged on, heavy and tense, but she noticed the human moving differently now. Every time he came into the cell, his eyes searched the door, his jaw set hard. He carried food still, water too, but he seemed restless, like a storm waiting to break. At last, one night, he entered without a tray, his steps quiet, his eyes sharper than before. "We cannot stay," he said, his voice low. "They will come again, and next time, I may not stop them." Her chest tightened. She froze in disbelief. Escape. The word rang in her head, but fear crushed it quickly. "Escape is impossible," she whispered, clutching her chains. "You cannot fight them all." He crouched near her, his gaze steady. "I don't need to fight them all," he said. "I just need to get you out." Her heart pounded, her throat closed. She shook her head. "Why risk this for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am nothing to you." His hand brushed the lock on her chain, his touch careful, gentle. "You are not nothing," he said. "You are worth saving." Her breath caught. Her claws dug into the cloak. Confusion burned inside her. She wanted to argue, to call him a liar, but his eyes silenced her. Then came the sound she dreaded, alarms blaring in the distance, heavy boots echoing down the hall. His face hardened. "It's time," he said, pulling a small tool from his belt. The chain snapped free with a spark. The weight of the shackle fell from her wrist. She gasped, staring at her freed hand. Her body trembled. She had worn chains so long that freedom felt unreal. He grabbed her hand quickly, strong but gentle. "Come," he said, pulling her toward. To the door. The alarm grew louder. Shouts filled the hall. They ran. The chain still clattered against her ankle, but his grip held her steady. He led her through narrow halls, past shadows of armed men. Their boots thundered. Their voices roared. "Stop them!" Her chest burned. Her breath ragged. Fear threatened to crush her. But his hand pulled her forward, never letting go. His strength a lifeline in the storm. Bullets rang out. Sparks flew against the walls. She cried out, but he shielded her with his body, dragging her into a dark corridor. Their footsteps echoed like thunder. At last they burst into the night air. The cold wind struck her skin. Stars stretched above like a million eyes watching. Her body shook. The world too wide after so long in chains, but danger still followed. Shadows raced behind, torches flared, weapons raised, her eyes widened in terror. "They will catch us," she gasped, her legs weak. He turned his face toward her, fire burning in his eyes. "Not if I'm breathing," he said, pulling her tighter. Through broken fences, across barren ground, they fled together, her cloak whipping in the wind, the sound of pursuit close but never close enough, his pace never slowing, his grip never loosening. Finally, they stumbled into ruins, broken stone walls rising from the ground. He pushed her inside, pressing his back to the entrance, his chest heaving, his eyes scanning the night. She collapsed against the wall, her heart racing, her chain still heavy, but her wrist free. The cold air bit her lungs. She stared at him trembling. "Why do this?" she whispered again, her voice raw. "Why throw away everything for me?" He turned toward her, his face caught in the pale moonlight, his voice low, firm. "Because no one should live in chains. Not you, not anyone." Her tears spilled freely, her body shook. She wrapped the cloak around herself tighter. For the first time she felt what freedom might mean, but it was tied to him, to the hand that refused to let her fall, and in the ruins, with the fire of pursuit still behind them. The alien girl sat in the dim light of her cell, her fingers tracing the edge of the cloak around her shoulders. The memory of the human's whispers still clung to her mind. She tried to push them away, but they returned again and again. She told herself not to believe, not to trust. Every story her people taught her warned of this. Humans were cruel, humans lied, humans broke hearts and lives. Yet when she remembered his voice in the night, soft and steady, her chest tightened with something she did not understand. The door opened once more, and he stepped inside, carrying another tray of food. The smell filled the small room. Her stomach growled in betrayal. She glared at him, trying to keep her face hard, but her eyes betrayed her hunger. He set the tray down slowly and stepped back, his movements calm, his eyes steady. No mockery, no cruelty, just quiet patience. She hated how it disarmed her. She hated how she no longer trembled as much when he entered. She ate again, quickly, almost angrily, as if to prove she did not care where the food came from. When the last piece was gone, she wiped her mouth with her chained hand, her eyes sharp. And then it happened. The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Why?" she whispered, her voice shaking, then louder. "Why do you treat me like this?" The silence in the cell was heavy. Her heart pounded. She felt exposed, as if the question itself was forbidden. Her people would have told her never to ask, never to open the door to a human's lies. But the question was already out, and it hung between them. The human crouched low, meeting her eyes. His voice was quiet, but strong. "Because no one deserves chains," he said. Her breath caught. The words pierced her deeper than a blade. She stared at him in disbelief. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She shook her head quickly. "Lies," she said, though her voice broke. "All humans take, all humans hurt." Her hands gripped the chain tight, the metal cutting into her skin. "That is what you are." But his gaze did not waver. He shook his head slowly. "That is not what I am," he said, "not what I choose to be." Her chest burned. She wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar again. But the calm in his tone shattered her anger. It was not the voice of a torturer. It was the voice of someone who carried his own wounds. Her eyes darted to his arms, where faint scars marked his skin. She had noticed them before, but never asked. Now they glowed in the dim light, proof that he too had suffered, proof that he was no stranger to pain. She whispered low, almost against her will, "What happened to you?" For a moment, his face darkened, a shadow crossing his eyes. "Once," he said softly, "I was in chains too." Her heart stopped, the room spun. The idea was impossible. Humans were captors, never captives, yet his voice carried no falsehood, only the weight of memory. Silence stretched between them. She could not look away. Her fear fought her confusion. Her hate battled her heart. Everything she thought she knew was breaking. She pressed her hands to her chest, whispering to herself, "Why?" Again and again, the word tore from her lips like a wound. He stood at last, his shadow falling over her, but instead of fear, she felt something else rise inside, something that shook her more than the chains ever did. When he turned to leave, she did not call him back, but her eyes followed him, her lips trembling with unspoken words. For the first time since her capture, she was not afraid to ask. She was afraid of the answer.
The alien girl sat with her knees to her chest, her chains rattling softly, her eyes fixed on the cloak wrapped around her body. It was still warm from the human's gift, but her heart refused to rest. She told herself again and again it was a trick. Humans never gave without taking. The next day the door opened, and once more the human stepped in, this time carrying something new. A tray filled with food, steam rising from it. Her body betrayed her with hunger, her mouth watered, but her mind screamed warnings. She had heard the stories of humans who fed their captives only to poison them later, or to laugh while they begged for more. He set the tray down slowly, not close enough to frighten her, but not too far either. Then he stepped back, leaning against the wall, his arms crossed, his eyes calm. He said nothing. She stared at the food, her claws dug into her knees. The smell of roasted meat filled the cell. Her stomach twisted painfully. She clenched her jaw, refusing to move. Minutes passed in silence. The human did not push her, he only waited, his gaze steady, like a hunter who was patient. She hated that thought, hated comparing him to a hunter, but something about his stillness was not cruel. It was quiet. At last, her hunger broke her pride. She reached out slowly, her chained hands trembling. She grabbed a piece of bread, holding it like a weapon at first, as if it would strike back. Then she pressed it to her lips. She expected laughter, but there was none. She expected him to snatch it away, but he did not move. She took a bite, soft, warm, real. She had not tasted real food in days, maybe weeks. Her throat tightened as she swallowed, shame and relief crashing together. She devoured the rest quickly, like an animal starved, each bite painful yet sweet. Tears burned in her eyes. She did not want to cry, not in front of him, but her body shook from tea. He rush of strength returning. When the tray was empty, she pushed it away hard, as if rejecting it. She glared at him through blurred vision. "Why feed me? Why not just kill me?" she whispered, her voice raw. The human's eyes softened. He spoke slowly, his tone carrying no anger. "Because you deserve to live." Her chest tightened. The words cut through her fear like a blade. She wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar, but the calm in his voice left no room for cruelty. He believed what he said, and that frightened her more than any whip could. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. "Humans don't care, they only destroy," she said under her breath. He shook his head, stepping closer. Her chains rattled as she pulled back, but he stopped before reaching her, crouching low so his eyes met hers. "Not all humans," he replied. The silence that followed was heavy. She stared at him, her thoughts a storm. She wanted to believe. Part of her begged to believe, but belief meant opening her heart to hope, and hope was the cruelest weapon of all. Still, when he rose to leave, she felt a strange emptiness. The cell seemed colder without his presence. She hated herself for thinking it, but when the door closed, her first thought was not fear. It was that he would return. That night, curled beneath the cloak, her stomach finally full, she whispered into the darkness, "Why are you different?" Her voice shaking with both fear and something dangerously close to longing. Her people had warned her of torture, of whips and fire, yet here she was, her belly filled, her body covered in warmth. No pain had come, only confusion, and that confusion gnawed at her heart. For the first time, she realized the real danger might not be his chains or his strength, but the possibility that he was not her enemy at all, and that thought frightened her more than hunger ever could.
She realized something terrifying. She was no longer afraid of him. She was afraid of losing him. The ruins were silent except for the sound of her trembling breaths. The alien girl sat against the broken wall, the night wind biting at her skin. Her chain still rattled with every small movement. Though lighter now, freedom felt half real, half dream. The human crouched near the entrance, his eyes sharp, scanning the darkness beyond. Torches flickered in the distance. Voices carried faintly through the wind. The hunters still searched, but for now, they were hidden. Her body shivered, not only from the cold, but from exhaustion. She had not run like this in years. Her legs ached, her lungs burned. She hugged the cloak tighter, trying to stop the shaking. He turned then, his gaze falling on her, his voice softer than the night air. "You're freezing," he said, stepping closer. She shook her head quickly, whispering, "I'm fine." But her voice betrayed her weakness. He did not argue. Instead, he lowered himself beside her, his arm brushing against hers. The warmth of his body spread through the chill like a flame. Her eyes widened, her heart raced. She pressed back against the wall, unsure. But when another gust of cold wind cut through the ruins, she could not stop the violent shiver that tore through her body. He noticed, his arm moved slowly, carefully, until it wrapped around her shoulders. She stiffened, every muscle tight. This was it, she thought. The trick, the trap. But his hold was not cruel, not heavy. It was steady, warm, protective. His chest rose and fell with calm breaths, a shelter against the storm. For a long moment she fought the urge to pull away, but her body betrayed her, leaning slightly into his warmth, her eyes shut tight, her lips trembling. Her people had told her humans were fire, dangerous and destructive, but in that moment, the fire he felt from him was different. It did not burn, it soothed. She whispered low, almost to herself, "Why do you keep protecting me?" His voice came close, steady in her ear. "Because I know what it means to be cold, to be alone, and I will not let you suffer it." Her chest ached, her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him to stop, to leave her, but instead tears slipped from her eyes, silent, falling onto the cloak. He did not wipe them away. He did not speak further. He only held her as the night stretched on, his presence steady, his warmth wrapping her in safety she had never known. At last, exhaustion overtook her. Her trembling slowed, her head leaned against his shoulder without her meaning to. Her chains rattled once, then fell silent. She drifted into sleep. For the first time in years, her dreams were not filled with fire and pain, but with the sound of his heartbeat, steady, calm, like a promise that no blade could cut. When she woke hours later, dawn's light broke across the ruins. She found herself still leaning against him, his arms still around her, his eyes open, watching the horizon. She pulled away quickly, shame flooding her. I did not mean to, she whispered, her cheeks hot, her claws gripping the cloak. He looked at her then, his eyes steady, no mockery in them, only quiet truth. "You needed rest," he said simply, "and I was glad to give it." Her heart stuttered. She hugged the cloak tighter, staring at him in silence. She wanted to argue, to call him a liar, but the words would not come. The ruins still echoed with danger. The hunt had not ended. Yet inside the shelter of his arms, she had felt something she thought impossible. She had felt safe. And that safety was more terrifying than any chain she had ever worn, because now she knew she wanted it again. The girl sat in the corner of her cell, her eyes heavy with confusion, her heart torn in two. One part still clung to fear, the other part whispered dangerous thoughts of trust. She hated that his words echoed inside her mind, hated that the warmth of his cloak still comforted her. The door opened suddenly, but this time it was not him. Two other humans stormed in, their faces sharp, their eyes filled with cruelty, their boots pounded against the floor like hammers. She froze, her chest tightening. These were the humans her people had warned her of. One of them sneered, pointing at her chains. "So this is the creature," he said. "Why waste food on it?" The other laughed, his voice harsh. "Better to sell her or break her. She's nothing but an animal." Her blood ran cold. She braced herself, pressing her back to the wall, her claws scraping the ground. She had expected this moment. Pain, torture, humiliation. She closed her eyes, waiting. But then a voice thundered behind them, strong, unshaken. Enough! It was him, the one who had given her food, the one who whispered in the night. He stepped into the cell, his eyes blazing, his jaw set tight. The cruel humans turned to him, laughing. "Why protect it?" one asked. "It's worthless." Her chains rattled as she trembled. Her eyes darted between them, fear swallowing her whole. Would he side with them now? Would he hand her over? But instead he moved forward, his body shielding hers, his stance firm. "If you want her," he said, his voice sharp as steel, "you'll have to go through me." Her breath caught. She stared in shock, her heart pounding wildly. He stood between her and danger, daring his own kind to strike. The other humans laughed again, but their eyes narrowed. One spat on the ground. "You've gone soft," he growled, "risking yourself for a thing like that." The man did not move, did not flinch. "She is it's a thing," he said. "She is alive, and I will not let you harm her." The girl's hands shook violently, tears burned her eyes. She had never seen such defiance, never heard a human speak like that. He was not just protecting her, he was fighting his own kind for her. The two men glared at him, tension filled the air. For a moment she thought they would attack. She thought blood would spill, her body curled tighter, waiting for screams. But after a long silence, the intruders cursed and stepped back. One spat again. "She's your problem then," he growled, "but don't expect anyone else to understand." They stormed out, slamming the door behind them. Silence returned, but this silence was heavy. Her heart pounded, her breath shallow. He turned then, his eyes softening as they met hers. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice lower now, calm again. She shook her head quickly, unable to form words, her throat tight. He crouched near her, not touching, not forcing, just close enough that she could see the fire in his eyes. Fire not of cruelty, but of protection. "I meant what I said," he whispered. "No one will hurt you while I am here." Her tears spilled at last. She tried to hide them, turning her face away, but the chains rattled, betraying her shaking body. She whispered through broken breath, Why do you fight for me?" He did not answer right away. He only sat there, his presence steady. Then at last he said, "Because I know what it is like to be left unprotected." Her chest ached, her mind screamed to resist, but her heart pulled her closer to his words, closer to the warmth she felt in his shadow. For the first time since her capture, she realized something terrifying. The danger she feared most was no longer the whip or the blade. The danger was that she might begin to believe in him. The alien girl could not sleep. Her thin body lay curled on the cold floor, the cloak wrapped around her tight. Her stomach no longer screamed with hunger, yet her mind refused to rest. Every sound from the hall made her flinch. Every shadow on the wall made her think of blades and whips. Her people had warned her. Humans were masters of cruelty. They broke hope first, then the body. She pressed her face into her knees, telling herself that the food, the cloak, the gentle touch, it was all a trick. The true torture had not yet begun. But as the night deepened, she heard something strange, a low voice, soft, steady. It slipped through the silence like a stream through stone. It was the human's voice. He was not shouting orders. He was not laughing in cruelty. He was whispering. At first, she thought he spoke to someone else, maybe another soldier outside the cell. But as she listened carefully, she realized he was speaking to her, though the words were quiet. "No harm will come to you," his voice said. "Not while I breathe." Her breath caught. She pressed herself tighter into the cloak, trembling. His voice carried through the metal walls, soft as if meant only for her. "Rest," he whispered. "You are not alone now." Her heart raced. She wanted to block out his words, but she could not. They sank deep into her chest. They were not the words of a torturer. They were the words of a guardian. She hated the thought, hated how her body warmed at the sound. She turned her face toward the door, her eyes glimmering in the dim light. Confusion burned inside her. Why would he whisper such things? Why would a human, an enemy, speak as if he cared? The chains rattled as she shifted, her ankle cuff biting into her skin. She pressed her hand against the wound, the sting sharp. She reminded herself of the pain, of the truth. Humans could not be trusted, and yet his voice still injured. Minutes stretched into hours. The whispers came again, not every moment, but often enough that she knew he had not left. He was outside, keeping watch, guarding her. At last she forced her voice through trembling lips, so low she thought no one could hear. "Why?" she whispered into the empty air. "Why are you doing this?" There was silence for a long time. Her chest tightened. Maybe he had not heard. Maybe he was gone. But then the answer came, soft as the first breath of dawn. "Because no one deserves to suffer like this." Her eyes filled with tears, hot and unwanted. She wiped them quickly with the back of her hand. She wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar, but the weight in his words was heavy. It carried truth. The cloak around her shoulders felt warmer now, almost alive. She pulled it close, her body shaking with emotions she could not name. Fear still ruled her heart, but something else fought beneath it. Something she had no word for. The whispers faded at last. The hallway grew silent. She did not know when her eyes closed, but sleep finally claimed her, not filled with nightmares of blades and fire, but with the echo of his voice, soft and strange. When she woke later, the cell was the same, the chains heavy, the floor cold, but inside her chest, something had shifted. The fear had not left, but it was not alone anymore. Now there was a spark of something dangerous, something that could not be chained, and she hated herself for it, hated that her heart listened to a human's whisper in the night.
The alien girl sat in the corner of her cell, the cloak still wrapped around her thin shoulders. The warmth clung to her like a strange dream. It felt wrong, it felt dangerous. No human should give comfort. Humans only gave pain. At least that was what she had always believed. Hours passed. Her stomach growled, her throat dry. She tried to stay strong. She had promised herself she would never beg, never ask. Begging only made torment worse, but the door opened again, and her body stiffened with fear. The same human stepped inside, his footsteps slow, not heavy like a soldier, his face unreadable. She lowered her head, refusing to meet his eyes. If she did not look at him, maybe he would not see her fear, but his voice came again, calm and even. "Eat," he said, placing a tray on the ground. The smell of warm food filled the air. Her lips parted, her throat ached, her body screamed for it, but her mind shouted louder. "This is a trick. Eat and they will laugh. Eat and they will take it away." She glared at him with defiance, though her hands shook. "I do not want it," she whispered, her voice sharp, but weak. The human did not laugh. He did not snatch the food back. He only sat down near the wall, far enough not to frighten her, close enough to watch, his eyes steady. He said nothing more, just waited. The scent grew stronger. Her resolve cracked. Hunger was a weapon and her body was betraying her. Finally, her fingers twitched, reaching toward the tray. She pulled back once, twice, but at last she grabbed a piece of bread and pressed it to her lips. She expected him to smirk, to mock her, but when she dared to glance at him, he had simply looked away, as if giving her privacy. Her chest tightened. This was not torture. This was something else. She ate quickly, every bite filled with shame, with confusion. When the tray was empty, she pushed it away and curled up against the wall again. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, not to him, but to herself. The human turned his gaze back to her, his expression calm, almost sad. "Because you are not an enemy to me," he said. Her breath caught. Not an enemy. The word stabbed deeper than any blade. Her people had told her she was prey to humans, that humans saw them as lesser, but this man's voice carried no hate, no mockery, only quiet truth. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was lying, but her throat was locked. Instead she hugged the cloak tighter, her heart racing with emotions she did not understand. He moved then, his hand reaching out again. She pressed her back hard against the wall, expecting the blow, but his touch was gentle once more. His fingers brushed against the metal cuff on her ankle, his skin warm, careful. Her body trembled. She tried to pull away but the chain held her in place. His eyes met hers, steady and soft. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She could not speak. She only stared at him, confusion twisting inside. His voice was not the voice of a torturer, it was the voice of someone who cared. When he adjusted the cuff, slipping cloth beneath it to ease the pressure, her heart pounded harder. No human was supposed to do this. No human was supposed to make her feel safe. And yet, against all her fear, she felt a strange warmth crawl into her chest. He stood again, stepping back, giving her space. "Rest," he said, and then he left the cell. The door closed. Silence returned, but this silence was different. It was not filled with terror alone. Now it carried questions, dangerous questions. She touched the cuff where his fingers had been, her skin still warm from the memory. She whispered to herself, "Why are you like this, human?" But there was no answer, only the echo of his touch lingering in her mind. For the first time since her capture, her fear was not the only thing inside her. Confusion was there too, and behind the confusion, something small, something fragile, a spark that she could not put out.
The girl sat in silence long after he left, her mind spinning with his words. He had said he once wore chains too. The thought clawed at her, tearing apart everything she had believed. Humans were masters, not prisoners. They commanded, they conquered, they destroyed, but his scars whispered another story. When the door opened again, she felt her chest tighten. He stepped inside without food, without weapons, just himself, his eyes calm but heavy, as if carrying a weight unseen. She stayed close to the wall, the chain rattling when she moved. He did not sit right away. He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly lowered himself onto the floor. Not far, not close, his voice steady. "You asked why," he said. "You deserve an answer." Her breath caught. She wanted to look away, but her curiosity burned hotter than her fear. Her lips trembled. "Chains," she whispered. "What did you mean?" His jaw tightened. His hand brushed the scar on his arm, faint but deep. He drew in a breath. "Long ago," he said, "I was taken by my own kind." His eyes darkened. Shadows filled them. They saw me as weak, useless, and they wanted to break me. She froze. Every word pierced her like a blade. She had never imagined a human could be treated the way her people were. "Your kind did this?" she asked softly. He nodded once, his eyes distant. "Yes," he said. "Not all humans are the same. Some are cruel, some take joy in suffering, but others fight against it." She stared at him, her heart pounding, confusion twisting tighter. If humans could hurt their own, then maybe they were not monsters. Maybe they were just broken like everyone else. He pulled back his sleeve further, showing another scar, long across his forearm. Her breath shook as she stared. It was not a mark of pride. It was a wound that spoke of survival. "When I see you in chains," he said slowly, "I remember what it felt like. The cold, the pain, the silence. I swore I would never let another suffer if I could stop it." Her throat tightened. Her eyes burned. She turned her face away quickly. She did not want him to see the tears fighting to fall. She pressed her claws into her palm, whispering, "You lie." But her voice had no strength. He did not argue. He only lowered his head. "Believe or not," he said, "it does not change what I will do. You will not suffer here." The silence grew heavy. She hugged the cloak around her shoulders, her chest a storm of emotions. Fear still clung to her, but now it mixed with something dangerous, understanding. Her people had always told her humans were beasts, incapable of compassion, yet here sat one who carried his own scars, who whispered promises instead of commands, who looked at her not with hunger, but with sorrow. Finally, her voice broke through, trembling. "If you were once in chains," she asked, "how did you survive?" His eyes met hers, steady, unyielding. "By holding on to one truth," he said, "that pain does not last forever, but choices do. I chose not to become like them." Her chest ached, the words echoed deep. She pulled her knees close, whispering into the folds of the cloak. "Choices," she repeated, her heart thundering. For the first time, she wondered if she had been wrong all her life. If maybe not all humans were monsters. If maybe one could be different. But as the thought bloomed inside her, fear clawed back. Fear of hope, fear of trust. She pressed her face into her arms, whispering, "I cannot believe you." He stood then, his shadow falling over her, but his voice remained calm. "You don't need to believe," he said. "You only need to live long enough to see for yourself." When he left, the door closed softly, not slammed, not locked with rage, just closed. She sat in the silence, her mind a battlefield, torn between the fear of everything she knew and the dangerous seed of trust he had planted.
The cell was cold, the metal floor biting into her skin. The alien girl sat with chains around her wrists and ankles. Her heart beat fast. Every sound in the dark outpost made her flinch. She had been told many stories about humans, all of them filled with horror. They said humans loved pain. They said humans broke aliens slowly just to hear them scream. She pulled the chains tighter to her body, trying to hide. Her small frame shivered. Her eyes burned with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give them the satisfaction. In her mind she waited for the door to open, for boots to stomp on the ground, for the human to enter with whips or knives. The door creaked. Her chest froze. The shadow of a tall figure entered. Light from the hallway touched his face. He was a human, broad-shouldered, rough jaw, eyes sharp like steel. She bit her lip until it bled. This was it. The torture was coming, but then he did something strange. He did not raise a hand. He did not laugh cruelly. Instead he crouched down, looking at her like she was not an object, but something alive. His voice came low and calm. You are safe here. She shook her head quickly. The words felt like lies. She whispered back, safe? No one is safe with humans. Her voice cracked, trembling like a candle in the wind. She pulled at the chains, rattling them to remind herself that she was still trapped, still a prisoner. The human did not strike her. Instead he reached out, slowly, his hand open. She pressed back against the wall, waiting for pain, waiting for the blow. But when his fingers touched her wrist, it was not cruel, it was gentle. He checked the metal cuff biting her skin, his brows lowered with anger, not at her, but at the chain itself. Her breath hitched, confusion cut through her fear. Why would a human care if she bled? Why would a human frown at the sight of her wound? She tried to understand, but nothing made sense. The silence in the cell grew heavy. She wanted to scream, she wanted to ask what he wanted, but her throat was locked. Then he spoke again, his tone softer. No harm will come to you. The words echoed in her mind like a broken song. She wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous. Every story of her people warned her, trust a human and you will suffer, trust a human and you will die. Yet here he was, not breaking her, not laughing, just watching her with eyes she could not read. Her body trembled, her heart fought inside her chest. Was this another game, a new way of torture, to give hope before crushing it? Her kind had been tricked before. She told herself this was the same, and yet a small spark lit inside her, small but alive. When he stood again, his shadow covered her. She closed her eyes tight, waiting for pain, but instead she felt a soft fabric fall across her shoulders. Warmth spread through her skin. She opened her eyes slowly. The human had placed a cloak around her. She froze. Her chains rattled with the smallest movement. She whispered so low it was almost air, why? But the human did not answer. He only looked at her once more and turned to leave. The door closed, and she was left alone with the cloak on her shoulders. The warmth of it confused her more than the chains ever had. She hugged it close, fighting the storm in her mind. For the first time, her fear was not the only thing she felt. Now there was something else. Something dangerous, something she could not name yet, and it made her chest burn with questions.
The morning sun cut through the broken walls of the ruins, pale light spreading over the girl's face. She blinked, her body still warm from where she had leaned against him through the night. But the moment she remembered, her chest tightened with confusion. She pulled away quickly, clutching the cloak tighter, shame and fear twisting together. Her people's voices echoed in her mind. Never trust a human, never believe their kindness. Yet her heart whispered something different. It whispered of safety. He rose slowly, scanning the horizon with sharp eyes. The ruins were quiet for now, but danger still stalked the distance. We must move before they find us, he said, his voice steady, his body ready. She nodded faintly, but her steps were heavy. Her chains still clattered against the ground. Every sound reminded her she was not free. Even though her wrist was loose, her ankles still bound. As they walked through the silent paths, she found herself glancing at him again and again. Each time her heart burned hotter, each time her thoughts fought harder. She should hate him, but she did not. She should fear him, but she could not. Finally, when they reached the cover of a broken tower, she stopped, her claws digging into the stone wall, her breath shaking. He turned to her, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" he asked. Her throat tightened, her voice trembling. "Why do you give me this choice?" she whispered. "Why do you let me live, let me walk beside you, when you could leave me behind?" His face softened, his eyes steady. "Because you are not a burden," he said. "You are a life, and I will not abandon you." The words struck her heart like thunder. She shook her head, tears burning. "If I go with you," she said, her voice breaking, "I betray everything my people taught me. But if I do not," her voice faded, trembling, "I lose the only safety I have ever known." Sile. Angst stretched between them, heavy, unyielding. Her hands shook as she gripped the cloak tighter. The decision weighed on her like a mountain. He stepped closer, but not too close, his voice calm, patient. "The choice is yours," he said. "I will not force you. I will protect you as long as you wish it, but the path is yours to walk." Her chest ached. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No captor had ever given her choice. No master had ever offered freedom. She trembled, staring at him, her heart split wide. For a long moment, she said nothing. The wind rushed through the ruins, carrying the echoes of hunters far away. Her tears finally fell, silent drops that darkened the stone beneath her. She looked at him, her lips trembling, her voice barely more than a breath. "I don't know who to believe anymore." He met her gaze, his eyes steady, burning with quiet fire. "Then believe in yourself," he said. "Believe in what you feel when you are with me." Her knees weakened. She pressed against the wall for strength. Her heart thundered so loud she thought the world would hear. At last, she stepped forward, small but certain. The chain rattled with her movement. She stood before him, her voice breaking as she whispered, "I want to stay. I don't understand why, but I want to stay." His eyes softened further, his hand moved as if to reach for her, but he stopped himself, only nodding slowly. "Then stay," he said, "and we will face whatever comes, together." Her tears fell faster, but now they carried not only fear, but release. For the first time, she had chosen not to run, not to surrender, but to belong. And as the ruins stood silent around them, she realized the truth. She was no longer chained by iron, she was chained by her own heart, and she did not want to break free.